Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning. Tori, hello. Hi. Hi, Kate.
Hello, hello.
So how's it going?
Well, I'm awake.
Awake
Angela,
is good.
Hey.
Oh, Kate, it's just I had to laugh because, you know, all the conscientious Asians, everybody except for Angela has contacted me to say, "Oh, where's the Zoom link?"
That'd be me. Literally.
No, everybody except for
email
Angela
arrived in my inbox. Yeah. Glad I'm not the only one who did that.
No, but it's just so typical of how conscientious and how diligent everybody is in that old trope of, you know, Asian women being on the ball and prompt, and it's just so funny. Excuse my husband.
Sometimes we just gotta own who we are.
Oh dear. Angela, you're a little bit in the darkness, honey.
Oh, I can turn on the light. I don't know if you heard the dogs just now. I had to kick them out. How's that?
Yeah, no, that's just the way it is with this whole Zoom, living on Zoom, isn't it? It's just the way it is. We just have to live with these kind of little interruptions. My husband's on another call. He's just left, gone through the office.
As soon as I logged in, I was like, okay, good. I've got everything. I'll prop my phone up here. It dropped. All the dogs are like, somebody's at the door. So they I'm like, no, shut up. Be quiet.
Elaine, hello.
Hey, sorry, I don't think my video is working. I'm going to try my phone.
Okay.
Rather than
There's
my computer.
a button on the bottom left where you'll see a video camera icon, and see if it has a red slash through it. If it does,
Yeah,
just press it.
I unticked that, and I'm still
Aw.
Oh.
Sorry guys, give me a sec.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Well, it's super good to see you again, Lee. I hope I get to see you at Stoker's.
Yeah, I did miss you too. It's like the only time I get to catch up with all my friends and in the sort of American horror community, and it's just, I'm bereft. It's just such a strange year, isn't it? It's just been.
Yes. It's almost over. We have no guarantees that next year will be better, but.
Yeah, I know. I'm just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cute.
Here we go.
Okay.
Oh, look. Oh.
Yes, he is just like, oh, are you
Puppy.
standing at your desk? You can type with one arm. I blame all my typos on this guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I wish I had that excuse.
He's so cute.
He is. He's a Chiweenie. He's Chihuahua, Chihuahua Dachshund.
Aw, that's adorable.
Thanks. Yes, we have 6 dogs. I swear I never wanted to be a dog hoarder, but the kids just keep leaving them here.
Oh, that's too funny.
Okay. Nadia. Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Live video. And
So Elaine's still working on it. Jean is here. Hello,
yeah,
Jean.
I can't. I don't think. Why won't it let me?
I do have to use my phone.
Yeah, I'm on my phone too, and how do I unslash the video thing on my iPhone? Sorry.
You just click it or press it. If you have, I guess, if you have a touch screen, just press it.
Yeah, I found that.
Or
Maybe go out and come back in again, Elaine. Sometimes that helps. The technology.
Yeah, sorry guys. Sorry about this.
That's okay. Grace!
Hey, here we go.
Yay! It worked.
Hey.
Grace, hello. We didn't
I made
expect
it.
Oh, fantastic. Oh,
I made it with
fantastic.
terrible lighting. Oh dear.
Hi, Grace.
Hello, Grace.
Oh, wow, this is so exciting. I never imagined we'd have so many of us here, and also to have Tori as well. It's just, oh, this is incredible.
Oh, you have just done such an amazing job with this, Lee. I mean, both of you, but unbelievable. This is such an amazing book.
Oh, thank you. It's nothing to do with, it's all of you that have done such an amazing job sending us these incredible stories. Jean and I we were blown away, weren't we, Jean? It's like, oh, look what we've got. You know, it's just been overwhelming, hasn't it? It just happened. It was amazing. And then for Kate to come on board, I think I waited an hour for Kate to come back and say, oh yes, we need to do this, you know.
Oh my God, he's so good.
Who else are we waiting for? Anyone?
Is everyone here?
I think so.
Elaine, do you think you could close your other window so we don't have a square when we do the recording?
Sorry?
Sorry, what's up, Kate?
So there are 2 squares on the screen with your name on it.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
There we go.
Okay. And I actually saw that Christina was up, so I was just wondering if maybe it's 4 a.m. where she is. So, but I saw her just post something, so I wondered if she might jump in. So we'll just maybe with a little bit of luck, she might. Maybe I'll just text her and see if she might have just got up to go to the bathroom. So, I mean, 4 a.m. is a bit much task for anybody to get up, isn't it? And thank you to the Australians who are up at 6 a.m. My goodness.
I know,
That's
you guys.
3 of you. Oh my goodness, what a meet. It's so cruel. It's so cruel.
I was already up because of small person.
Oh, I know.
Oh.
So.
Sleep is so precious now when you're a new mom.
Yeah.
Oh,
How old is your baby, Elaine?
He's 7 weeks.
Oh,
Very small person.
Turning 8 weeks next week. And we thought, you know, the past couple of nights she's been letting us sleep for 3 hours at a stretch, and we're like, okay, we're getting the hang of this. It'll be fine. Tonight was not.
you look surprisingly awake, though. Well done.
Yeah, I don't miss those days.
oh, wow. Well, I guess we could get going. Kate, so we're planning to talk for about sort of 30 or 40 minutes. I hope everyone's okay with that. And if you need to run away, Elaine, I understand. We get it. And I think Nadia might have to rush away and get back to work as well. So we'll see how we go. I'm really grateful to you all for just turning up. It's just amazing to see all your faces. I can't believe it. And I wish we'd been able to be together for an actual launch in person. That would have been too wonderful for words. We'd had hope for Genevieve and myself and Rena and Grace to be at Worldcon, and that didn't happen. And so this is just really special to be together on even on screen, and especially when we're so global. And apologies to poor Gabriella and Christina and Rin, who are in Manila and also in Singapore, where it's 4 a.m. right now. So we're going to hand it back over to Kate because she's very experienced at this sort of thing, thank goodness, to run this.
I'll go ahead and explain what we're going to do. I'm going to do a little short introduction, and then I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. And I'll call your name because the circle shifts and it'll just be easier. So I guess we can get started. Hello and welcome to the release day for Black Cranes. We have with us today the editors and contributors and a special guest. And I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves. I'll start. I'm Kate Jones, writer-editor at Omnium Gatherum, and we published this wonderful anthology. And next up, we have Lee Murray.
Hi everyone. Yes, my name's Lee Murray. I'm an award-winning writer and editor from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I'm going to jump in right now and just mention the people who are not here, and those include Rena Mason, who's a 3-time Bram Stoker award-winning writer who is a contributor to the book. Also Rin Chupeko, they're a writer from Manila, incredibly powerful writer. Also Gabriella Lee. And missing from our lineup today, we have also Alma Katsu, who sends her apologies. Alma wrote an absolutely incredible, powerful foreword to this book, which really epitomizes the whole theme of the anthology. So welcome everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
And next up, we have Genevieve Flynn.
Hi, everybody. I'm based in Brisbane, so it's early morning here. So I'll try to be coherent. I'm a published horror short story writer, and also a freelance fiction editor, and I specialize in speculative fiction. And I don't know whether or not Christina Singh is going to make it as well. So yes, I'll also mention Christine as one of our fabulous contributors. So that's me. We'll hand off to the next person.
Excellent. And thank you to Greg Chapman for the wonderful cover art that he did on the cover. Next up, we have Nadia Bolkin.
Okay. Hi. So I'm Nadia. I am actually coming in from Washington, D.C. So it's like the end of the workday for me. And I write horror stories. My collection is called She Said Destroy. And that's where my story for Black Cranes comes from. So, yep.
Excellent. Welcome. Next up, Tori Elvis.
Hi, I'm Tori Eldridge. I had the honor of reading an arc of Black Crane's anthology and was blown away. I am the novel of the Lily Wong series, The Ninja Daughter, and the newly released The Ninja's Blade, nominated for the Anthony McCavity Lefty Awards, and The Ninja Daughter was named Best Thriller 2019 from Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. So I'm very excited about The Ninja's Blade coming out, and I'm really excited to celebrate Black Cranes.
Next up, Elaine Kuyeke.
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Elaine Kuyeke. I am a horror and science fiction writer from Melbourne, from Manila via Melbourne. I write science fiction, and I write science fiction, horror and fantasy. I particularly love writing about haunted places. And yeah, that's it for me. I wrote I've contributed stories to The Dark and Strange Horizons, and yeah.
Let's see, next we have Angela Yuriko Smith.
Hi, Kate. It's a thrill to be here. My name is Angela Rico Smith, and this is Chupacabra, who decided he needs to nap right here, right now. I publish Space and Time magazine with my husband, Ryan Ozzie Smith, and I generally write horror and science fiction. My last one was nominated for a Bram Stoker. It was Bram Stoker finalist in 2018, Bittersweet. And I am about 2 or 3 weeks away from releasing the sequel to that. So I'm very excited.
Excellent. And Grace Chen.
Hey, thank you. I'm Grace. I am an Australian, Malaysian, Chinese writer. I write mostly science fiction and horror. And I'm currently based in Melbourne, so it's also quite early where I am at the moment. I've had short fiction published in a few venues, and I am also working on an upcoming novel. So yeah, lovely to be here.
Welcome, everyone. So we're going to have a few discussion questions. So the first one I have for you is, what are some of your favorite themes to explore in fiction? And we'll start with Nadia.
Oh gosh. Okay. I was like, what are those themes? I don't know. I'll go for it. So let's see. I think that's been an evolving thing for me, but if I look over sort of when I first started writing till now, constant things I would say are grief and loss. And I think that probably has something to do with like I moved from my father's home country, Indonesia, when I was 10. So I have sort of this history of like dislocation, and I write a lot about that kind of like loss of identity, loss of like memory, history, familial connection, that sort of thing. So if I think, and I think, you know, thinking about the story that I wrote for, or not wrote for Black Cranes, but appears in Black Cranes, that's a very strong theme there as well, is this sort of like being forced out of your identity, and then trying to kind of reclaim it back in your own way.
How about Grace?
Yeah, I glanced at the questions a few minutes before the panel, so this will be very channeling the unconscious, which is actually definitely one of the themes that I love exploring in my work. So I think that has definitely come through in the two stories that I've contributed for Black Cranes. I think that, yeah, when I write my characters, I really love kind of considering what is unsaid about how they about their experiences and how they interact with the world. And I think what comes through in both of the characters that are in my stories is an exploration of the unconscious and the emotions and memories that they have carried that aren't spoken or aren't acknowledged for many years. So yeah, some of those really powerful emotions that we can carry for a long time. I also like to challenge the idea of, I don't know, I think there's an idea that people who submit, or women who submit, that's sometimes seen as a sign of weakness. And I wanted to use my characters to challenge that in a way, because I do disagree with that idea. So yeah, using my characters and my stories to challenge that idea.
Tori.
Oh gosh, well, let's see. I'm all about empowerment and expanding perception, but I tend to do it while delving into some pretty dark situations. So in my Lily Wong books, Lily, she's a modern day Chinese Norwegian heroine. Let's see, Library Journal called her a heroine for the Me Too era. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. So it's really diving into very dark, gritty themes and crimes against women. The second book really does a deep dive into the sexual exploitation of teens. My goodness, right? But at the same time, you know, I want to lighten that with entertainment and layers. And so complex family dynamics plays a huge part in these books. Now, addition to these novels, there have also been quite a few published short stories, many of which are horror, many of which you know, are very dark. And even though I'm diving into, you know, I mean, it could be a Balinese witch doctor, it could be, you know, submerging underwater in this kind of trapped fantasy place. No matter what it is, I'm looking for these empowering the spirit while facing, you know, these sorts of things. So I think those are my themes.
Excellent. Elaine.
Yeah, just looking over, I'm Chinese Filipino, as I've said, and the history of colonialism, colonialism is something that I've been tackling a lot in my work, because the Philippines was you know, colonized by Spain, then by the United States, and by Japan. So the horror that comes from colonialism and the loss of agency that comes from that is a really it is something that I really grapple with in my work. So a lot of my characters will be struggling with that in some way. They'll be struggling with possession, the loss of agency, the loss of control, and that's where the meat of that's where the horror comes in for me.
Lee.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, it's interesting to hear everyone's inspirations. Yes, I think that notion of otherness has been a big factor, and particularly more recently as I've sort of got older, I'm exploring that whole aspect of identity. I'm a third generation Chinese New Zealander, and have always felt othered, and not a real New Zealander because I don't look like everybody else, and not a real Chinese person either. So that those notions of otherness have been quite a big factor, particularly more recently. And I know, you know, Nadia wrote something recently about how she was still struggling with her identity and, you know, who she was as a person. And I feel that now, and, you know, I'm 25 years on from where Nadia is, so, you know, I'm still working on that. But I think one of the key things, I just put out an anthology, well, my first debut collection in July called Grotesque Monster Stories. And so I think the monster as metaphor has been huge in my own stories, particularly and in and around the New Zealand mythology and monsters as well. And I noticed that has come up on quite a lot of the other, you know, contributors to this anthology, Black Cranes, where we've had Gabriella Lee exploring the idea of the Tianak monster, and Rin Chupeko, they looked at the Capre monster. So we've had a number, and Rena Mason's story looks at the fox spirit sort of mythology. So a lot of us using monsters as a metaphor for to explore other aspects of, you know, this otherness idea. And I think that's really exciting, that to be able to bring in these other notions. So yeah, I think the monster as metaphor has been a big one, and using that to explore those particular tropes.
Angela.
I agree a lot with the otherness. I think that's something that a lot of us have experienced. And in my own work, I notice there's a lot of authenticity, but if you're not authentic to who you are, you will die, kind of thing. Some terrible, terrible catastrophe will happen to you, which is in Skin Dowdy. She's not happy, inauthentic, but in the end, it collapses everything. And the same thing with Vanilla Rice. And I think a lot of that comes from growing up. My grandmother was Okinawan. I grew up in a very homogenized kind of Midwest experience. And I had a lot of, I'm like everybody else, I think. I think I look like everybody else. But then I bring kimchi to the lunchroom at school. That isn't so good. Never do that, I found out. Not in 5th grade. You can't handle it. When everybody's looking at you going, what is that smell? You realize, oh God, it's my lunch. So that monster, accepting the monster, kind of comes from that experiences where I didn't know if I was ashamed of that or proud of it for a long time. It was really when I got older that I identified it and embraced it. But it was kind of like that if you don't like this, I'm sorry. I have to be authentic to who I am, or I can never be happy. And I might kill you, like in Skin Daddy. That could happen. I could light you on fire if I'm not authentic to myself. So this is important.
She doesn't look scary, but
It's this chihuahua.
Genevieve.
Similar to everyone else, I think that that idea of the monster, I like exploring where characters have maybe one face that they will present to the public. And then there's the hidden heart, the part of you that maybe isn't so acceptable, but it's there. And like Angela is saying, like if you don't accept that part of you, that it can become quite monstrous, and whether or not you accept the monster into yourself. So a couple of my stories have that, where things have been suppressed and they're monstrous, or else things have been taken to the extreme and they're monstrous, but they're just aspects of self. So I think that's really interesting. That's an interesting thing.
Wow. There's just so many wonderful themes. I can't wait to read everything everyone's ever written. So how do you think that dark fiction portrays women, and Asian women particularly? And I mean, how do you feel when you experience this? I would say particularly from male writers, or even maybe contrast that with how women approach that. Any ideas on that? And you can raise your hand when, or just signal me, and then I'll call, so I won't be surprising anyone. Lee?
Well, I think, you know, apart from people like Tori, who are really sort of waving the banner for, stories with, Asian women in them, we've kind of been a little bit neglected, and where we have, there have been portrayals of Asian women. They're the stereotypical, the submissive, the tiger mom, those kinds of very, very stereotypical depictions. And I think that part of the reason why so many of these writers here in front of us embraced the idea of black cranes is because where were those other depictions of Asian women? Where are those empowering stories that speak to our experience and reflect what we've lived? And they just weren't there. And so when I met with Genevieve at the Brisbane conference, GenreCon, and we just started having this conversation saying, well, where are we? Where are the people like us, and where are those stories? And suddenly this anthology came about. And I think, and even the people that we sort of approached who weren't able to write because they had other commitments said, oh, this needs to happen. This is important, and where are these depictions? So maybe one of it is that we haven't seen it before, and that's perhaps where the excitement came with this particular anthology.
Tori?
Well, first off, thank you for that. Yeah, I agree. I think most of the novels and stories that I've read that have had Asian women, I'm half Chinese Hawaiian, in case you're wondering, and the other half is Norwegian, so that's where I come by this, have not been written by Asians and have not been written by Asian women. And so what you're getting are these I don't want to say superficial characters, although many times they are, but it's authors writing looking from the outside in. So it's hard to really get that kind of authentic depth when that's your approach. Now, not to say that you can't, really get depth by, writing in another culture. It just takes a lot more commitment. And I don't know that the novels and stories that I've seen that read or even in media, television, film, whatever, that have had Asian, South Asian characters in it have had that kind of depth. So I think it's a new thing. I think this Black Cranes is tremendously important because it's bringing these voices out, not just to show all of these rich and layered individuals, right? Not just, we're not speaking for an entire, our entire community. We're talking about individuals, and that's what we are. And so that's why I think Black Cranes is so incredibly important. And it seems as though the publishing company, industry in itself is starting to, open up to this. And I really hope that this anthology gets some notice and those publishers start, like you, start paying attention.
I'm definitely open to submissions.
Oh, there's an invitation.
So, yeah, but when I went to the recent Worldcon that was supposed to be in New Zealand and didn't happen, which was a real shame. But it was online, and that was the clarion call that they wanted more diversity. They wanted differently abled authors and stories about from different cultures. They wanted LGBTQ stories, so that there was that real hunger for where are these stories, where are these characters. So I think this is the right time for this anthology to be coming out. There is that real hunger. People want to know what our experiences are, and they want to see themselves in the fiction that they're reading. So I think that this is the real cusp of something really huge. So I think, like Lee said, when we first started talking about it, it just seemed like this idea, and that we thought, oh, that would be fantastic. And it's just gotten wings now. It's just, amazing.
I think science fiction and fantasy might be a little bit farther ahead of horror, and horror needs to catch up, definitely. But we're working on it. So, Angela?
Different take, if I could.
Sure.
So coming from sort of like the indie horror world that I am most familiar with, I think there is actually, I agree that there's very little depiction of Asian women. And I think that the only people who write it, in my experience, like short fiction that is good, are other Asian women. Like, I recognize the names in Black Cranes as people that I normally see writing about them. I think that a lot of people who don't fit those demographics don't feel comfortable writing it. And if they, maybe in their heads, they've written a character who is, but it's not obvious in any way. And so I think that it's one of those things where the challenge for me is like, how do I write a character who's not just sort of being embraced because she is from a minority group? But because she's a good character or whatever, I think that it's an added burden on like Asian female writers to be like, okay, write your, like we want your stuff, and it's like, okay, like great, here it is, but I think it's more complicated than we might hope, is all I will say.
You'd like to be allowed to write other characters as well and not having...
Yeah, and I do, because for me, it's like, if I were to not, that would be negating my mother's half of my genealogy. But sometimes when people have reached out to me and said, I'd really love to see something set in Indonesia from you. And I'm like, is it that you want to tick a box?
I have to confess to doing that sometimes. I will, but I wouldn't take something that wasn't a great story either.
Yeah, that's good.
You have to kind of walk
I just think it's a little, it makes you feel a little weird sometimes.
I think it's okay to to tick that box sometimes though for other people, because it's the way of recognizing, oh, this is outside of my experience, but I need to also pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And I think in a way, anthologies like this are champions for everybody. And one of the reasons why there is such a, it's not just for Asian women or Asian blended women, but it's for all of us, because we've kind of had this experience of, like, say in the 70s, I know he's so distracting. The 70s, women were all one thing. This was the epitome of beauty. Men were all like this. And now we're starting to realize there are many different types. Excuse me. So much cooler in here now. Hot chihuahua. But we're realizing that we're vastly different experiences, whether we're 100% Caucasian, whether we're Asian blended, whether we're Black or Chinese or Hispanic. We're realizing that we are all individuals. There's no cookie cutter identity. And by us coming out with an anthology like this, by the conversation that happened between you two, that broke it all open. And so I look at it as we're champions for authenticity. Woohoo, my keyword, authenticity for who you are. That beauty is not blonde or brunette or redheaded. It comes in all shapes and sizes. It's all ages. And the same with men, you know, you don't have to be this cookie cutter way. And we kind of show that in this book.
Great.
Yeah, I completely agree with the themes that everyone's talked about so far, especially that idea of that tension between, I guess, a lot of the depictions of Asian women we see in media are very flat, very two-dimensional, very stereotypical, whether that's whether they're the villains, the monsters, or whether they're the token sidekick, very rarely the main character. And sometimes it can feel, you can feel a bit of that pressure not to play into rewriting that stereotype. And maybe I do identify with what Nadia said about feeling like, oh, why am I writing this story? Or why am I being asked to write this story? And that extra pressure of being maybe a marginalized writer and questioning the whether you're further sort of playing into those stereotypes or the authenticity of your own story.
Yeah.
So that's why I think I'm very excited about the stories in Black Cranes, because I think it's so important that these stories depict the interior worlds of so many diverse characters. I think that's very exciting and very important to show the really complex interior worlds of these characters who may happen to be Asian.
Elaine, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, so growing up, I very rarely saw myself, even growing up in the Philippines. Like, you would never see specifically a Filipino Chinese character, even in Filipino soap operas. So I never saw myself. I didn't really see Asian women depicted in any media that I consumed at all, in any horror media that I consumed at all, until The Ring and The Grudge, and then and from those movies, we suddenly got a plethora of, you know, of horror films with women ghosts and with this really vengeful women ghost, and I like, and that was a powerful thing for me. But at the same time, a lot of those films for me, like, felt like they put women forward as both monsters and victims, and what I would like to see going, and I don't think those films were written by women either. They were written by men. So I think, yeah, going forward, I would like to see more complicated and nuanced portrayals of women, more than just a monster, and more than just the victim. I'd like to see women. I would like to see women, navigating those narratives that have been forced on us. I'd also like to see more stories about queer Asian women as well, because that is definitely something that hasn't that is definitely something that that we don't see very much at all, unless the only exception I can think of is the short story market, where a lot of people like Alyssa Wong, Isabel Yap do write because they are queer and Asian themselves, have managed to write those into their stories. So I'm hoping that that's changing in the genre at large as well. Yeah.
Excellent. So, over your writing career, has your approach to writing dark fiction changed or grown in any way, or how, as you approach markets or as you approach themes that you're interested in? And again, if you could just let me know when you're ready.
Sometimes I think what your name looks like, can be an influencing factor. Like, I have a French first name and my married name is Irish. So on paper, I don't look Asian at all. So I just wonder whether or not that's been a factor. And there is, I think that part of yourself where you feel like, do I put myself forward as an Asian writer or just as a writer? And like Grace was saying, do I write the stories that sing to me, or do I write the stories that I feel like I should be writing and the characters I should be writing? So that's a question that's been in my head for a little while now. Just, who am I as a writer? And also, where do I fit in the market? So I think that's maybe something that, if you're not the standard writer that's traditionally been published, the white male writer, I think that's something that you maybe the white male writer doesn't have to think about that, but as a person with a Chinese heritage, that's something that is in my head. So I think I don't know whether anyone else has got that experience.
I do. I always use my grandmother. I was named after my grandmother, Yutiko. And I have always used that name because I think I must have been 12 and we were having a conversation, and I absolutely loved her. She was the most wonderful woman on earth. And I had said, the teenage thing of, when I have a baby, it's going to be a girl, and my first girl I'm going to name after you. And she was horrified, because to her, Eureka was a terrible name. Her name that she went by was Mary. And when she had been, I guess it was Pearl Harbor, and I don't know my history that much, but I know an internment camp was involved, and nuns, and they took away her name and called her Mary. And so to her, Eureka was such a bad name. You did not want to carry that on. So that's why since then, I've always used it as my entire name. And when I married a Smith, that became really, really handy, because there's a lot of Angela Smiths out there, I'll just say that. So, but sometimes I have a feeling of, I'm only 25% Okinawan. I don't want to present myself as being something I'm not. So that's my thing, is almost a reluctance to, yes, I know my middle name is Yutiko, but I'm not entirely Asian. I don't want you to think that it's yes, I eat weird stuff, but, I don't want to pretend that I'm more Asian than I am, I guess. So that's and that's becoming a real thing. I don't think with Asians, but there's been a lot of the stories where people are posing as African American and they're not, it turns out. And so for me, I've been extra sensitive of that now. Like, I am blended. I'll show you my ancestry.com. So, but really, I've never regretted it. It is for her. And I always think when something happens and I get to sign my name on something big, that's for her.
I have something to add. Well, of course, my name is Lee, and that's a little short, Asian name. So lucky me. And people generally, when they forget my name, call me Kim or Sue. So it's that whole. It's a short Asian name. But mostly when people see my name, and my married name is obviously Scottish. But when people see my name written down, they think I'm male. So I get away with that a little bit. So I think, Genevieve, I think you're right. Sometimes when people see our names written down, we might get a look in because they don't assume that we're Asian. But in terms of the question that Kate was asking about, has my writing style or the way I approach stories changed over time? Particularly now I tend to write more horror. And I started out writing chick lit of all things because, write what you know. And then I realized that, chick lit wasn't the place for me. I needed to be with these darker people because I wanted to explore more themes that resonated and more relevant to me. And I think that's the point here, is that your stories become more personal. That when you really want to write a powerful story, then they have to come from somewhere personal. And we can see that in the Black Cranes lineup. My own stories, Frangipani Wishes comes from my own family. And a story of loss and grief and trauma, and Phoenix Claws is actually just I married a Guilo. I married someone white, and so our own family had this strange little kind of personal test, or initiation test for anyone white coming into the family. They'd have to eat chickens feet, and if they were prepared to eat chicken's feet, then they were prepared to be accept our our Asianness and the sort of internal racism that goes with that. So I wanted to explore that idea, and I think when you bring the personal, and I don't mean you have to put your you don't have to expose entirely your sort of whole personal history, but just that kernel of reality or authenticity, as Angela calls it, to your stories, and those become extremely powerful stories. And I think about Christina's novelette. In fact, this is quite the story, because Christina Singh is a poet and a very accomplished poet. And Genevieve and I asked her for a story, and story is hard for her because she writes these beautiful, tiny, concise, sharp, perfect observations in poetry. But when you're asking someone to write a story, that's a little different. That's a different. And I knew she could do it. I just knew she could do it. And she came back with something that was 12,000 words, and she just poured this apocalyptic fantasy onto the page for us. Just. I'm going to write a story, whoof! And we clawed it back, because obviously 14,000 words was quite a lot different from the rest of the anthologies. So she worked really hard with us to bring it down. But just the whole point of, I'm going to write something personal, and here it is. And I think the power of those stories where we put the personal in, and I think that's the key with this whole anthology, is that's where the power of this work is.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've maybe done a little bit more with my work, particularly with Black Cranes, is just to be a bit braver with telling some of the truths that are maybe in my family, or within myself. Whereas before you feel like, oh, you know, that's not palatable. That's not the nice thing to write about or to have exposed. But I think that when you're willing to reveal some of that, I think that's when you have that authenticity. You have that where it's connecting with so many readers that we've had reviewers come back and they'll be, you know, raving about different stories for each review just because there's something that touches each reader differently. And I think that that comes from that authenticity where we're being a bit brave.
I probably have a kind of a slightly different experience coming from Hawaii. Hawaii is an ideal place to grow up as a mixed race person. As an Asian blended person. I mean, you know, I'm almost half Chinese and a little bit Hawaiian and half Norwegian, and I pretty much felt welcome everywhere. And so that's an amazing experience, right? It's not a common experience. And in addition to that, I came to writing through a circuitous route. I mean, I was, you know, hell-bent on getting on Broadway as an actress, singer, dancer. So that's where my career began, during Broadway musicals. And then I moved out west and, you know, did some television and film and wrote screenplays and then became like this martial arts fanatic and a, you know, 5th degree black belt ninja person. So I'm mentioning this because I'm eclectic. That's my point. I do a whole bunch of things. And even back then when I had a website, it was, you know, the brand was me. You know, anything I wanted to do, it had these empowering themes. I was going out there. I was, you know, blogging on mindfulness, whatever, didn't matter. It was like whatever I wanted to do in my life, that's my brand, right? And so when I started writing, when I actually, let me put it this way, when I committed to pursuing a career as a fiction writer, because I wrote my first novel when I was writing screenplays a couple decades ago, but I wasn't ready to commit. So when I made that commitment, I allowed myself that room to write whatever I wanted to write. And the first thing that I was working on was a novel from back then. It was set in Brazil, Black Magic of Brazil. It was, you know, epic and all these, you know, kind of historical qualities there, because I'm a mixed race person, the characters are mixed race, and I'm interested in other cultures. And you know what? I think a lot of readers of all ethnicities and just, you know, white readers are interested in cultures. I mean, it adds layers. It's, you know, I think that's why so many people are relating to the stories in Black Cranes, whether they're Asian or Asian blended or not, is because it's fascinating and it adds layer and intrigue and texture. And then under that are all of these themes that we can all relate to. And I think that's, again, one of the big powers of writing an anthology like this, is not just for the power of representation, which by the way is huge, and the power of authenticity, which I'm with you, Angela, that's a big, huge one for me, but also reaching out to people who don't know about our cultures and who enjoy, you know, all these little nuances. And so, you know, hats off to Black Crane, because you're hitting all of that.
So we're getting close to the end here. I think we can have one more question. What project are you working on next, or working on now, and what's coming up for you? And let me know who wants to go first. Or I'll pick.
You're all being so Asian right now.
I could actually go if you want. I have to go to work. I work at the library 2 days a week, and of course it would be this evening. So, but I love working there because I essentially get paid to go sit and talk about books and magazines. So I'm like, absolutely. So, but I do have to run in just a sec. What I'm just finishing now is the second Bittersweets, which is sweet and sour. And I'm super excited about that because I've sat on it through the entire. Originally, I was going to try to make it one book as a prompting from some publishers, and I've decided no, I'm just going to do it the way I wanted to and make it 3 novellas. And so the second one has been written for ages, and I've just been sitting on it. Now I'm releasing it. And then I've got a poetry book that I've also delayed publishing forever. I think it's like 2 or 3 years old. So I'm going to finally get that out of here. And then get my husband's book out of here, because I've been sitting on that for a couple of 2 years. Yep, 2 years. Our anniversary is this Sunday, so I definitely should get it done by then. And then, of course, the magazine. We're right now deadlining on number 138. So that is the final tweaks, and then that's out of here. And then I'm probably just going to go slip into a coma for a while.
Wonderful.
I'll jump in. I've just recently finished co-editing another horror anthology with Louise Zeta Sampson. It's with Things in the Well publication. It's called Tricksters Treats 4, Coming Buried or Not. And it's a charity anthology to support the Indigenous Literacy Foundation in Australia. So that's bad or good timing, releasing at the same time as Black Cranes. So it's a full weekend for me.
I'll go first if you guys don't mind, because I may have to wrangle baby. It's eight minutes to her waking up, as much as she's got the schedule. I am currently like in between sleep deprivation and baby wrangling. I am working on a ballet space opera. It is a sequel to one of my short stories called These Constellations Will Be Yours. It has sentient spaceships and ballet dancers as revolutionaries, and there is body horror and ghosts. And yeah, and I am, like I said, I am wrangling that in between sleep deprivation and baby wrangling. And so Godspeed me.
Can I just say, I loved that story of yours, Elaine. I read it and it was just mind-blowing. Just, yeah, so dark, but beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, thank you, Genevieve.
You're welcome. So I'll keep an eye out when you're finished wrangling this book.
Well, I'll go then. Black Cranes has obviously been consuming a lot of my time and my headspace, and of course I've been trying to read around, other people's work, and extra work that I hadn't seen of yours. Some of your work that I haven't seen. So I still haven't read the Ninjas, the Ninjas Blade, the sequel. I haven't got to the sequel yet, so I want to get to that. I've read the first one and I love that kick-ass protagonist, so I'm looking forward to reading that. So I have a book coming out with my Omnium collaborator Dan Raybarts. We write a collaborative series called The Path of Ra, and the third book in that series, The Blood of the Sun, is coming out in November, so sort of working on marketing that. And in that book I write Penny Yi, who is a Chinese Maori scientist, and I have a background in research science, so that's where that comes from. And it's a supernatural crime noir thriller set in the Auckland streets and on the sort of, right in the middle of an apocalypse. Go figure. So I'm looking forward to that one coming out. But at the moment I'm writing some poetry, which is a bit of a change for me. So, and I've got 8 short story commissions that I need to kind of get onto as well.
Let's see, Grace?
I have been writing a bit of short fiction this year. I am fairly excited about this fun story that's quite close to my heart. It's coming out in Unnatural Order later this year. It features a a monster and a symbiotic relationship between a monster and another character. I'll leave it at that. It's one that I enjoyed writing a lot, and it has some dark but fun twist. The other big project that I spent a lot of time working on this year is my novel. So I am writing a near future science fiction novel, which has an Australian Malaysian Chinese main character. It's a novel about sort of mind uploading and virtual reality, but it sort of uses that to explore things of identity, relationships, and loss and cultural loss as well. So I'm fingers crossed. I can't make any fingers crossed that there will be an exciting announcement about that in the near future. So stay tuned.
Nadia.
So let's see. I just finished a memoir that I've been working on for the past couple of years. And I have no idea if it's going to see the light of day, but it's done. And so right now, I'm finishing up short story commissions that I've been delaying during that time. Hoping to be finished with that by the end of the year, and then hoping to start a novel, which would be my first, about cults. And it would be led by a half Asian woman. So fingers crossed that I'm going to try to lean into my identity there, and hopefully, yeah, it works out.
All right, I guess that leaves me, hey? Well, right now I'm on the virtual tour for the Ninja's Blade, and I'm halfway through writing the first draft for the third Lily Wong book, The Ninja Betrayed, where I take Lily and Ma to Hong Kong, which is loads of fun, and there will be all sorts of intrigue. It takes place during the September 2019 protests. So in addition to all the corporate stuff that's going on and family stuff that's going on, there's that, because, you know, Lily always has a lot of things. Looks like I'm going to have something very exciting to announce very soon for a project that is literary fiction with a lot of horror elements and dark fantasy, magical realism elements. So, but I can't say too much about that. In the meantime, my agent is shopping an apocalyptic, well, a dystopian thriller. It's kind of like a political conspiracy thriller set in an antimicrobial resistant future. And it was based on a short story that was published a couple of years back. And I started this before I got the 2-book deal for the Lily Wong novels. And so I had to put it aside. And by the time I finally got back to it, it was January and the pandemic. Okay, so here I am writing stuff, right? And then I'm watching it happen on the news. I'm like, oh my God, I'm starting to feel like Will Ferrell, you know, in that movie, right? You know, where Emma Thomas is writing stuff and it happens to Will's life. And I'm thinking to myself, please don't let me be making this happen. But it's not about a pandemic, but it is in a place in the world that has been affected by pandemics, and society has changed in a, shall we say, handmaiden's not great kind of way. And so the heroine is that. She's a young doctor, a rebellious doctor, but no, she's not ethnic. She's from the Midwest, you know, kind of playing on my North Dakota Scandinavian roots. And that other thing is, again, very ethnic, mixed race, but not mine. So I'm very fascinated by this. And apparently my writing is staying just as eclectic as I am.
Can I just jump in, Kate? Because I just would like to mention what Rena's doing coming up. And she's going to be editing with Vince Liaguno. She's going to be editing Other Fears, an anthology of diverse terrors on behalf of the Horror Writers Association. And so she's looking for dark fiction stories from people from diverse backgrounds. And she's kind of indicated, please, people, Black Cranes, she'd love to see some stories from you. So that's what she's working on, and it's wonderful because actually the blurb for that particular anthology is very similar to our own Black Cranes back cover copy. So obviously this is, like you said Genevieve, this is obviously a topic that's becoming very relevant right now in the I think with the pandemic. These kinds of cracks are showing, and what was perhaps simmering beneath the surface before it's coming to the fore. And so it's really time to air out these things and talk about them, because it is so topical right now. So bravo to Rena for that particular project which she is championing.
Excellent, and thank you everyone, and congratulations on a release of a wonderful book. We're getting so many requests for it, it's just ridiculous. So I think it's going to be a great success.
Yeah, thank you everybody. Thank you all for contributing and trusting Genevieve and I with your stories. We're so proud of this project. It's so inspiring, and almost it's just overwhelming. Some days I just go around smiling, thinking how excited I am to be associated with you all and this wonderful project. Thank you to Kate for taking it on and being brave and for saying yes to these crazy ideas that basically emerge out of conferences and talks around coffee. Isn't that right, Genevieve? I am so proud and just so excited to be involved in this project. So thank you so much.
And I'd just like to say thank you to Lee as well. I mean, being the conscientious Asian, she'll, like Tori was saying, we're being so Asian where we won't put ourselves forward. But you've been an absolute champion. If it wasn't for that wicked gleam in your eye when you suggested Black Cranes to me, I think we wouldn't be here, but we are, and it's from your inspiration as well. So yeah, don't forget to cheer yourself too.
Great. Well, thank you everyone, and we'll have this up for you on Saturday or Sunday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for coming.
Bye-bye,
Thank
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.